And for rumors out there, Florida State and Clemson are currently in discussions with the ACC of wanting out of the ACC conference in a $570 million lawsuit. But on top of that, there's been more rumors that 6 to 8 ACC teams are also linked to potentially leaving the ACC being the next conference to leave, and joining the Big 12. The SEC says they don't want any part in any of these teams, and we'll talk obviously about all these different perspectives, Ben. But, I mean, this is something we talked about a couple weeks ago. It's bringing to fruition again. And to be honest, if we start with the angle of Clemson and Florida State, I don't mind them wanting to leave the ACC.
Oh, no. Once the Pac-12 fell, almost over a year, once USC and UCLA left, after that, just throw everything out the window.
I think it was when Colorado, sorry to interrupt, when Colorado and Utah left, I think that's when the tides turned.
Colorado was first.
No. USC, UCLA were first.
No, I meant Colorado was the first team to leave after the UCLA. Like
correct.
They were
and then Utah came, and then Washington and Oregon left, and that's when everything went chaotic.
I think for you, I get that, the Colorado thing, because that really helped define it. But the USC, UCLA, for me, when they left, it was over. Like, everything was over. It was a free-for-all. And with Clemson and FSU, when they look around and they say, okay, well, we can either wait around like the Pac-12 did, or like more specifically Stanford and Cal did, and wait to be left behind, which is a real possibility for anyone. Look at Oregon State. Look at Oregon State and Wazoo. Those are both really good football programs. Not national championships, but like 7-8 win football programs.
Bowl games is all you need for a conference.
Exactly, right? And so Clemson and FSU were like, okay, we're not going to become irrelevant because our commissioner of the ACC is an incompetent buffoon. They decided we need to go out there and go figure out what's best for us. Now, we can get to the SEC, what they think of it, but like, no, I don't blame the Clemson and FSU for being like, this sucks, tradition and history are kind of gone, but we need to figure out what's the best case for us following the fallout of the Pac-12 and now possibly the ACC.
Yeah, I think they see the writing on the wall. I think there's multiple things with the ACC going on right now. It's the deal with the CW network kind of being a lower-tier network. It's the lack of competition. You look at some of the other conferences with the Big Ten and the SEC and how much money they're bringing in. Let's be honest, once this started to become a Power 4 and the Big 12 bringing in Colorado, Utah, Arizona State, what they did before bringing the UCFs, the BYUs, and they're starting to get every single area of the United States. And you got to give a lot of credit to Brett Yormark and what the Big 12's doing, because if you're able to get Clemson, Florida State, and then you're able to get some of these other schools from the ACC conference, and this is the conference in the Big 12 that's able to grab new teams and adapt every single year. The Big 12, they're not in the same level as the Big Ten and the SEC, but you damn know for sure that they've got a seat at the table, and they're going to be a conference to contend with for years to come, just based on how many schools they have, the depth, the income they have coming in. It's going to be a big conference, but it's not going to be Power 2 10 years from now if the Big 12 is able to even add 2 powerhouses in the ACC, and you've got the South now with UCF, you add Florida State, Clemson, you start to get North Carolina, Duke. I know we talk college football, but imagine college basketball, what that conference could look
Absolutely.
like too.
Yeah, so there's no longer, obviously, a Power 5. A Power 4 doesn't work either, because right now it's a Power 2. There's a 1A, 1B in the Big Ten and the SEC. Rank them however you want. The Big 12 is still laps behind. And the ACC is probably neck and neck with the Big 12. The only way they can, and I believe they will be, next to the SEC and Big Ten, right now currently Big Brother, is by those two teams, Clemson and FSU, joining the Big 12. And then you can make an actual argument. I think that this is totally fair. Big 12, is the Big 12 better or the same as the Big Ten and the SEC? Because, yes, the SEC and the Big Ten have really good top-heavy teams, right? Washington, Oregon, whatever it is. Ohio State, Michigan. And then there's a huge drop-off. SEC, Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama. Huge drop-off. Maybe I'm missing a team in there. But the Big 12, Clemson, FSU, Utah is a very good organization, very good program, and then just a lot of solid teams. U of A is really good. You add some other teams in there, whatever it could look like. And then as well in basketball, it's not close. It's the Big 12, everyone else. So that's where I am on that.
I think it's an interesting thing, and I think something that we might see later on next year and years to come is, so from a college football playoff perspective, the Big 12 this year is going to have one team automatic, potentially have a second team. They're probably one of the deeper conferences, but in terms of actual college playoff teams, it's going to be slimmer than the Big 10, who's probably going to have 3. SEC's probably going to have 4, maybe 5. But this is something, Ben, I think that you'll eventually see from the Big 12 is them going out and reaching out to the SEC and to the Big 10 to schedule non-conference games. You schedule non-conference games against the Big 10. We want our best, our Utah, our not even our best, our teams in the middle, the Kansas States, to go in and play the Penn States. And if they beat Penn State, that's a better look for the Big 12. It's a better resume builder, and that kind of adds the non-conference value for the Big 12 to start bringing in more teams, if that makes sense.
You know, you have mentioned it, too, just a second ago, and I really want to highlight this, like the Brent Yormarks of the situations. Brent Yormark was under the same circumstances as the ACC is about to be and as the Pac-12 was. They lost Oklahoma and Texas. And instead of curling up and bleeping and moaning, they wiped their hands of the situation and said, all right, what are we going to do? Added Colorado, stayed afloat, right? Because right now, the Big 12, as it's currently constructed, is like a life preserver, is like a lifeboat. Now, how do they become a yacht? You add Clemson and FSU to the situation. And it's the same thing that's happening with the ACC. Just any ACC fans out there. You are going to become the Pac-12 if you have a George Kliavkoff like you do right now as your commissioner. And the Big 12 have Brent Yormark. What are you going to do? Are you going to try to figure out the situation, or are you going to try to resist conference realignment? Cough, cough. How well did that go for the Pac-12? It's why the Big 12 is going to work, and it's why they're going to get these 2 big teams and possibly some other teams, Duke or North Carolina for basketball's sakes. And it's exactly why they're going to live, and you're not going to. Because instead of resisting, they've decided to open their arms and said, all right, we might not be a fan of this, but this is the best way we can thrive as a conference. And you kind of briefly mentioned it. If they get Clemson and FSU, they are on the same tier as the Big Ten and the SEC. You can't make an argument that the SEC and the Big Ten should get more teams than the Big 12 in the championship, the 12-team playoff, because honestly, you could argue, yeah, you guys might be a little bit better at the top, but our 16 teams, no one is a debacle outside of ASU and whoever. Name another terrible team, but Texas Tech, good program. U of A, good program. Utah, Clemson, FSU potentially. This is how it's going to work for them. Not bleeping and moaning like the ACC and the Pac-12 already did.
Yeah, then on the other side of it, too, if those teams, Clemson and Florida State, are kind of at the forefront, we mentioned there's 6 other teams that are tied that are also expected to leave if those teams leave, being Louisville, NC State, Virginia Tech, Miami, and Pittsburgh. And you also got to think, too, teams like Duke and North Carolina are right behind them wanting to leave. That's where I put a video out a couple weeks ago talking about the SEC and how they need to drop their ego and go after a Florida State and a Clemson. I understand you already are in the South right now, and you've got that for sure, like with the South Carolinas, the North Carolinas, you've got Florida already secured. But you add Florida State and Clemson with their ESPN deal and what they already have. I know you want 16 teams, but Florida State Clemson doesn't hurt you as a conference. It only improves you and makes you even more dominant of a conference. And you've got non-conference games with Florida State and Clemson. Like Clemson goes and plays South Carolina and plays Georgia every year. Florida State goes and plays Florida State every year. Florida State plays Florida every year. Those are even more conference games. You get more money from those. And to add Florida State and Clemson, 2 teams that are 10-win teams every single season, it only improves the SEC. That's where it's like, for me, it pisses me off when Greg Sankey says, you know what, we're good with our 16. We want to focus on our 16. Why not even build up your resume and build up your conference by adding 2 powerhouses, the 2 big powerhouses in the South when you're a Southeast conference, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I'm going to totally disagree with you here. If I was the SEC, I don't need you. Like, I don't need you.
You don't need them.
Yeah, you don't need. I don't need you.
It can.
Yeah, of course it can, right? I'm not disputing that. Like, yeah, potentially, but like, they just signed a grant of rights deal. They just signed a TV deal recently. They can't redo that deal anytime soon. Right now, it's like, why am I sharing money with you?
Yeah.
And not only that, I kind of find it hard to believe that they could get even more money. Like, at some point, it is going to be capped. Yeah, they could probably get a little bit more, but like, why go through the trouble? We're the SEC. We have Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, Georgia. We're not losing any of those teams anytime soon. The Big Ten, the same thing. Like, I'm just like, I don't need you to succeed. What leverage are you bringing in? Like, I should pay you less to come here because you're going to fall and dissolve in the ACC. Yeah, maybe 5-6 years from now they can get a little bit more money, but I don't need you. Like, that's the art. I don't need you. What are you talking? I'm the SEC. The Big 12 is where it really does make the most sense for me.
That's a good point.
I know, but I get what you're saying. You're not wrong. All I'm saying is, if I'm the SEC, I don't need you.
Yeah,
I don't need to figure out more travel.
I didn't see it from that angle. That angle's too. I think both sides are definitely interesting. And for the Big 12's sake, like we mentioned, Brent, you went your mark. To be able to keep that conference relevant and to be able to add those teams, you got to give them a lot of credit.
Just really quickly, and to say, like, I don't need you, you know who does need you? The Big 12. The Big 12 and could tell the rest of their teams, hey, shut up. We're going to pay them more than you. We know, granted, right now that's not the case, but when they get a new TV deal, like, we're going to pay them more than you because we need Clemson and FSU to survive because right now they have a lifeboat, and the lifeboat's got a small leak in it, right? It's nothing they can't plug up for now, but it's not going to be like that forever. You got to plug up that lifeboat to be able to survive and become just like the other big cruise ships. They need them. And if I'm Clemson and FSU, I want to go to the Big 12 because they need us. SEC don't, and the Big 10 don't. It is a partnership made in heaven where the Big 12 can say, hey, we'll even give you more than the other teams. And what is U of A going to say? You can't pay us more. Shut up, U of A. We're going to get Clemson and FSU. If you want to leave, you can.
Yeah, we saved you from the Pac-12.
We saved you, right? And in like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, everyone can get paid the same. But for now, we need them more than they need us. It's a partnership made in heaven where I should want to go there if I'm those 2 teams. The other 2 conferences, I'd flip them the double bird. We don't need you. You can come here for less money if you want. Sure, we'll take you. But we don't need you. The Big 12 needs you.
Can I get a seat on your lifeboat? Would you give me a seat on your lifeboat?
No.
How big is your lifeboat, would you say?
We don't have a lifeboat. We just have like the thing that the girl was in the Titanic.
Oh, the little the raft?
Yeah, that she was on, and I just wouldn't I'd pull you up on that.
You wouldn't slide over and give me some space on the raft?
I would slide over. I just, like, if we started to sink a little, I'd push you off. At that point, it's every man for himself.
Fair enough. My lifeboat is definitely like an inner tube. Very, very small lifeboat.
Where you could still get taken away by a shark.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.